Welcome to the 18th episode, the season finale of Saturday night's main event, Shad Nostalgia, right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern. As always, I'm good old Mike Belcaster, and my co-host with the most.
Live from No Cell Studios, the ACEFIELD Tavern, ACEFIELD Retro. We are 3 days away from Christmas, depending on when you listen to this. Maybe it is 2 days prior, but we are in the holiday season getting ready for the big red man in the big red jacket to hop down our chimneys and give us a present. And I got to say, man, what a present this has been to cover 18 episodes of Shad Nostalgia with you, jam-packed with 36 Saturday night's main events. Woo! And as time has gone on, it's like a line graph of peaks and valleys. And man, I got to say, with this PG era, ruthless aggression moving out into the rearview mirror, we're sitting here emerging with some of the worst WWE stuff I think I've ever seen. And last week, you guys listened, we got some feedback, and I appreciate you guys supporting what we're doing here. We're going out with quite the whimper, but we're going to make the best of it, right?
as we always do. But I mean, listen, if your expectations weren't low when you started it, because mine were a little low, I was like, oh, how good is this going to be? And it got great. We were in some high highs in those earlier episodes, which was fantastic. But of course, we can't just be... It can't all be, the top of the roller coaster. You have to go downhill and hit those loop-de-loops eventually, right? So, I mean, that's what we're doing here. And we do it with style. And, of course, that's what we do because this is Shad Nostalgia right over here at the Turnbuckle Tavern.
In the season finale, we're going to be covering 2 episodes here, 2 events. Saturday night's main event, number 35 from August 13th, 2007. In New York City, New York, MSG, main event by Batista and Kane versus Finlay and the Great Khali with Ranjin Singh in his corner. And, of course, finishing up with the last one so far that we have on the books. Maybe we'll see more Saturday night's main events down the line. Maybe we'll review them as they come out. But Saturday night's main event number 36 from July 28th, 2008 at the Verizon Center in Washington, D.C. Main evented by John Bradshaw, Layfield, Kane, Ted DiBiase, and Cody Rhodes teaming up against John Cena, Batista, and Cryme Tyme, Shad Gaspard, and JTG. So a lot to cover here. The newsletter is ripe with a lot of conversation, of course, to build the context where we are here in 2007. Man, June 2007 is one of the more historic in a bad way for the wrestling world, with the Chris Benoit tragedy taking hold and gripping the news cycle for a very long time. And we're dealing with the fallout of that. And the interesting part is we're going to see a year pass because we're going to cover 2007, which is 2 months removed from everything going down. The immediate reaction, talking about where they, first of all, in the immediate had a pivot from storylines, but also the fallout with the media PR, and like we talked about last week, how this really could have been the downfall of WWE at large, and wrestling was moving in a direction where they had to figure out a way to, first of all, test for steroids, because that was a big issue coming out of this, and find a way to rehabilitate their image. And it started with blacklisting Chris Benoit from all of their media, and we still see that today, and rightfully so. I mean, it was the right decision. And a year later, we kind of see them rehabbing, but it's still part of the conversation.
Well, of course. I mean, how can it not be? It was such a monumental, it was such a moment, and it took wrestling fans back, forever. Like, it sucked the wind out of my sails as a fan. I know I remember coming home from work that day. I was super excited to watch Raw and, or SmackDown, whatever the hell it was, the tribute show, and you turn it on. I remember hearing Finger 11 and that one thing song, and it was the tribute to Chris Benoit, and it was insane, man, and such a drop in the gut. It was like, wow, like what happened, and then as we learned how the tragedy that was happening at the time and unfolding in real time, it was an insane moment for wrestling in general, and entertainment in general. I mean, you don't really see these things happen live on the, and it really did unfold live one moment at a time. It was insane, man. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, and if you guys weren't watching at the time, they didn't have all the facts, and did a tribute show to Chris Benoit, which is, I'm sure you can
normal
find
for them
on the deepest, darkest circles of the web. I'm sure the episode still exists somewhere, but they obviously had to resurface and figure out the week after, and figured out that the truth of what actually happened made them come in a bad light. And that emphasized the situation of, in a really bad way. They didn't have all the facts, but that is the fallout here. And that also almost is maybe the catalyst for them wanting to go to the PG era to attract more kids and be more kid friendly. And we know that PG era is looked upon very in a negative light, I would say, for sure. And maybe rightfully so as far as storytelling goes. It's definitely one of those years, like we mentioned last week, was the start of it. But 2008 is the official start of the PG era, where they actually put the edict out there into the media saying they're going to literally transfer over and their products will become very kid friendly. And you're going to shy away a lot of adult fans and people like us who were moving into college and out of college and becoming young adults. It wasn't for us anymore. And you didn't have anywhere else to go. I mean, you could have went to your Ring of Honors and find a way to consume New Japan Pro Wrestling, but WWE was really the one show in town as far as being able to consume it on a regular basis. And wrestling fans were kind of stuck on a whim, and some of them just left wrestling altogether.
No, 100%. And I was, almost as close to be there too. Thank God we had an alternative like Ring of Honor. And I mean, TNA was doing great things at the time. So, I mean, that was the light at the end of the tunnel is, if you were the WWE train for so long and it derailed as bad as it did, you finally found different paths to kind of go, oh, I feel much more comfortable celebrating wrestling on this side than I did over here for a while. And it took a lot of time for fans to recover from this. And it was crazy.
And it's not to say the roster didn't have talent, because it did. I just felt, I think Chad, I always use this saying that, Chad always says, but the edges were as buffed out as ever, where it just became, dude, there might be a time, because I know that there's people that wax poetic and look fondly upon the new generation. I always look back at 1995 for being some of the worst times in WWE, WWF, but 2008, there might be some, adults now that grew up and look at this 15 years later or 16 years later and say, this is what I remember fondly. And then going back and watching this would be their real nostalgia trip, that their rose-colored glasses replace this and cover up all the shortcomings and they enjoy it. But for you and I who lived it in real time, it leaves a really bad taste in my mouth for as a fan. This was the most disconnected I've been from the product. And we mentioned the fallout from 7 years prior to this, 6 years prior with the first episode in 2007, with WCW dying and ECW as well. The ramifications of that has been stretched upon years. And I think we're seeing that, where the complacency that is developed with WWE at this time is quite evident. And we're seeing it in front of our screens. And we're really kind of, lack of competition breeds really complacency and laziness.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's crazy, man.
All right, let's get to the happy hour and talk about what's going on in the newsletter. First of all, in August of 2007, let's get to the happy hour.
Happy hour.
Oh, Dad, Dusty Rhodes getting a crowbar for Christmas, Daddy. This poor man. I'm sad that we're not going to see Dusty for a few months here, but it's going to be good. We're going to be having a good time.
So here we're on the newsletter, August 27th, 2007. And one thing I want to note from the newsletter prior to this is they're transitioning over to HD, and that was a big deal for WWE to get new HD cameras and transition over. And they were at the forefront. I remember baseball and hockey and all those, and NBA were all moving towards it, but WWE took the leap first and invested in it. And so that's where it was going. So when WWE switched over to HD, if you remember in the bottom corner of the show, it used to say, or the top corner, WWE HD, because it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And, high definition TVs were in vogue at this time and sort of new technology. And it added some appeal to the product. But there was also some conversation in some circles were talking about how it's bad for the product because it'd be harder to keep the magic of wrestling alive. And you have to be a little bit more careful with how you present it because of how HD these cameras were compared to the standard definition that we were used to. Your thoughts on that?
I remember hearing about it a lot. I remember people saying, we're going to have to change the way makeup is and all this stuff. Like, there was a lot of factors that went into the HD switchover. And I don't know. I think they handled it very well. I didn't see that big of a difference in the quality of the product, especially like how they wrestled on TV. Like, there wasn't that much that changed in ring to really like, oh man, like they should not have went HD, man. Like that was the downfall of WWE. So I think it was, not for content wise, it was the best thing for WWE to do, because we, as you know, watching some of these older episodes, I mean, even the last ones we just watched, they were pretty hard on the eyes, very blurry, especially with all the neon lights and LED lights and stuff like that. Like it's hard to get that beauty on that we see nowadays on TV.
Yeah, I think it washes over us, especially since we are so inundated with perfection as far as streaming goes. Like, we expect it to be HD and crystal clear, and when we watch those like nature documentaries, you want to see the bottom of the ocean floor type of stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember my first experience with HD, and it was watching a Yankee game, and they were at Tropicana Field, and I remember being able to see, and it was artificial turf at Tropicana Field, historically one of the worst fields in baseball, but you could see each blade of the artificial grass as the HD, and I remember just being amazed by it. And I don't know if kids today would understand that, because like everything they watch it's just been HD their whole life. But for someone growing up with those little TVs that we used to watch scrambled, and some of us watch pay-per-view on scrambled TV and try to figure out what was going on, HD was a whole new world for us.
No, 100%. I mean, you go back to the early 90s and watch a hockey game in regular standard broadcast, and then watch one in full HD. It's mind blowing. The HD that was introduced to us here is shit compared to what we have now. I mean, we're at 4Ks and 8Ks, and we sound like old people talking about it because it's so insane. So it's crazy though. I mean, a revolutionary change for sports. Period. Though, is WWE switching over.
So August 27th, 2007, we're about 2 months removed from the Benoit tragedy, which happened back on June 25th of the same year. And some of the fallout here in the immediate was drug testing the WWE wrestlers. And in the last few weeks, several state boxing and wrestling commissions have begun actively discussing regulating pro wrestling. So a guy named Armando Garcia, who offered to drug test all the wrestlers for free, had to rescind his offer this week because his commission doesn't have the power to regulate pro wrestling. They're also discussing the possibility of re-regulating it. The other fallout of this is ridding of Chris Benoit from their history. And this started with, of course, the network didn't exist, but On Demand was still emerging, and WWE 24/7 was a service that was offered a subscription basis. Again, WWE being ahead of their time. Judgment Day 07 is now up on WWE 24/7 as of post date August 27th. And Meltzer says not only is Chris Benoit's match deleted, but in the fan poll on the show asking which champion is most likely to win a belt, MVP is axed from the list because he was Benoit's opponent. So this is just a sign of things to come, where they erase big moments. And again, rightfully so, because they don't want to honor what happened and all of that. And even in today, they refuse to show in WrestleMania 20, one of the best moments in wrestling history is just gone off the face of the earth. And this was an example of it. And they made the decision in-house. I mean, they were pressured, similar to the original steroid issue in the early 90s. They were pressured to make this disappear and optically go in another direction. And first things first is erasing Chris Benoit, even in the immediate history of Judgment Day 07.
It's crazy. Like, it's just wild to just think that somebody's just vanished, you know, but necessary, obviously. But it's just, like, seeing it happen in real time was insane. Like, as a wrestling fan, because you're just like, oh, it's all gone. Like, wow. And it took a while to get used to, you know.
So at the top of the list, obviously, is the wellness policy and a second congressional panel. The House of Commerce Trade and Consumer Protection Subcommittee has requested the wellness policy information from the WWE. They outright stated that they're interested in holding hearings on the steroid issue later this year. And Meltzer says, for those who don't follow politics, it will probably stun you to know that the committee we wrote about last week, who initially requested the information, need to be fixed. They're all at odds. Yes, both committees try to achieve the same ends, but must be on the same page. And Meltzer finishes up by saying they also have actively discussing with people who would best be called to testify, so the wheels are in motion. So they're getting eyes on them at the highest degree. They want changes to be made in the industry, starting with treating the employees and regulating steroid use, drug use. The wellness policy needs to be taken seriously. It's not going to be just an optical type of lens thing where you're going to actually pretend you're doing this. They want to take it seriously and understand that, you know, we saw it change, like, you know, the changeover in after 1994, when guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels got the nod to be the guy, especially with all the eyes being on, you know, the steroid trial with Vince McMahon. Did it really go away, though? You know what I mean? Like, it eventually came back. We had smaller wrestlers, but even the smaller guys, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, even Punk. I'm not saying Punk used steroids, but the emphasis was for these guys to be muscle bound. And, like, you know, Punk during his time at the top of the card, which we'll talk about because it's around this time, he's as big as he's ever going to be as far as muscles go.
No, 100%. And it's I mean, that's the thing, is like, you have such a takeaway now. So you have to learn how to kind of rewrite how you do things, right? And that's, I mean, especially when you're in public eye, the pressure's all on WWE, Vince, you know, the talent, and it's a weird place to be in for them. Definitely strange.
So lawmakers in Florida have been holding meetings with people to get more info about the wrestling business in general. and all the policies among WWE. Again, the Chris Benoit tragedy brought to light a lot of the stuff. We had CNN, you had people talking about this on news cycles, and this wasn't just an in-house wrestling story. This became larger than them, and they really couldn't control the storm. And Meltzer continues, they want information dating back to the mid-90s, including details on guys who failed drug tests and didn't end up being suspended. They also want to talk about the problem, being that, that happened with Scott Hall repeatedly in WWE until he finally gave his notice, at which point he was immediately suspended. So they're opening up Pandora's box and finding a whole bunch of the warts of things that happened here. And Meltzer says the problem is that most of these committees need to learn about the wrestling business. And while they want to learn, there's no way you can learn everything you need to know in a crash course. Plus, it's such a weird business that many people need help to even wrap their heads around what occurs regularly. So they're trying to understand, to regulate it and trying to treat it in a way to, I guess the best intentions are to fix it, to make sure that these things don't happen again. Yeah. And I think the Benoit story is a tragic one, but it is one that happens over time. It is continual abuse of the steroids and potentially drugs and head injury and all that stuff that goes down the line. And it is not a one-off fixing thing that a lawmaker in Florida can fix, especially when they have no information about the wrestling industry. And it's the hot button issue, of course. It's upon conversation. People are talking about it. And similar to the steroid trial, WWE has to ride this out, but it almost, again, changed the landscape and almost erased them off the face of the earth. People don't realize that. It was very close to, being a tsunami that took everything down with it.
No, and the media was out to take down everything they possibly. I mean, there was not a news station you could not turn on CNN without hearing about it. It was on every single outlet out there. Fox News, like everything was just it was consumed by this tragedy and the lack of management on WWE's part for people like Chris Benoit, where they could have prevented something like this, or at least treated Benoit for something like this to help him better himself. It's messy, man. But I think in hindsight, it was probably the best thing that happened to pro wrestling. And I mean that with most sincerity. I think a lot of talent is going to be here a lot longer because of this everything happened, all the positives taken, those steps taken after this tragedy. I think it really benefits everybody in the long run, fans and talent.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it takes situations like this to force their hand. And we talked about this, and when Matt from Extra Cooler was on here, we were talking about, would they have changed their approach and emphasized, the talent's health if it became, was it Vince's intention to help them? No, he was forced. And I think situations like this, like, of course, we don't want the tragedy to happen, but like you said, the silver lining of, if this had to happen, at least it changed the industry and held them accountable to health and wellness of the professional wrestlers, where they're not being utilized and discarded like these guys were prior to that moment. And I really believe it is the 2007 moment where you can look at as wrestling went in a different direction and changed the way things are done. It wasn't about cocaine and pills in the back, and we started moving towards the Adam Cole era of locker room with video games and being the elite type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it sucks because it takes something like that for happen, a cataclysmic moment for essential change to take place, when it should have just been change that happened because it's the right thing to do. And unfortunately, money dictates that wasn't ever going to happen. They were always going to treat wrestlers like they were interchangeable. And at the very least, it's gotten better. We've even hearing this week, which, this week that happens right now is Christmas. And for the first time in forever, WWE has given off their talent for a full week. And that never would have happened in 2007 prior to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's always a long road to rebuild, right? And it took from now until Vince leaving the head of the table to get these very smart decisions like that. Like, of course they should be home with their families this week. It's Christmas, man. But it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
So outside of this actually happening behind the scenes, obviously this is going down and takes precedent, but people need to remember what was going on the screen. And they were doing this Vince McMahon is dead storyline. Ironically, it was going on behind the scenes. So if you guys remember, they had that scene where Vince McMahon had this like mob hit on him where he was blown up in a limousine and he died. And that was the whole storyline. And that happened the week before the Chris Benoit stuff. And Vince obviously returned to the screen to do this ill-timed Chris Benoit tribute show before they knew all the details. So a whole bunch of shit that just went down in the bad direction. But for those that didn't know where the storyline was going, and I certainly didn't know where the storyline was going prior to reading this, because there was a whole storyline plan that was disclosed to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and I'm sure people will dispute, and maybe Bruce Pritchard will have a conversation about this wasn't actually going to happen. But it's always interesting to see if this didn't happen, what would have unfolded on the screen. And this is apparently what would have went down. So Meltzer said there were other versions of this story, and it probably would have changed many times before completion, before it was very long term. And things like injuries and such always do a number on plans. Plus, this version would have required Vince to be out of the picture for a long time. And after about a week, there's already talk about how to bring him back to TV. The idea was that Vince got into the limo and supposedly blew up. We saw the entire storyline leading to the big three-hour Raw, which eventually wound up being the Chris Benoit tribute show. Meltzer continues, the plan was for the whole of that show to be built around the investigation. And in the end, Linda McMahon would be arrested. It would turn out, though, that she was innocent. And in the end, nobody could solve the mystery. So it would be determined that the case would be closed and it was time to move on. So this would lead to a unique Raw where they'd air the reading of Vince's will. The reading would be done by Vince himself on video, supposedly filmed before he blew up in the limo. Meltzer continues, Vince would then announce that he was leaving everything to his illegitimate son, Mr. Kennedy. There'd be a giant revelation. This would also lead to the revelation that Triple H was married to Stephanie and that he was Vince's son-in-law. And thus we get a long-term Triple H versus Mr. Kennedy program where Triple H, the knight on the white horse, would be fighting back to bring the McMahon family back to justice. When the time was right, Vince would return, and they revealed that he faked his death, that he and Kennedy were in on the whole thing together, and because Vince felt Kennedy was the only one in his family with natural, ruthless aggression. So even though people can deny and like he was saying, things could have happened. Mr. Kennedy got hurt a million times every opportunity was given. Like won Money in the Bank, got hurt, all that stuff. Who knows if this would have continued? This seems like a Vince McMahon storyline, all right? Like this obviously could have played out in front of us. Yeah,
and sign me up for it too, because I think I was so on the Mr. Kennedy bandwagon that I would have absolutely loved this. And but yeah, it was still, I thought the whole Vince death thing itself was super pushing at the time, and I wasn't tragedy aware at the moment, so I was still like, man, this is kind of fucking deep and dark, and probably shouldn't go down this route. But yeah, interesting to see how it worked. I never heard that before. So
they continue this illegitimate son thing, and eventually they go with Hornswoggle, right? Like that's eventually what they go with, and that wasn't the original plan, and it winds up goes over like a wet fart in church type of stuff. And Meltzer also says this would also lead to a program with Vince versus Shane in some form. He was told last week that the Raw plan was to start up the Vince's storyline where it left off, though I believe they're determining how much of the original story they plan on going with. Seems in bad taste to continue that story, especially with everything that went down, and that's eventually what they decide to move away from it. And they kind of leave Vince off screen for a little bit prior to having him come back. But yeah, you mentioned Mr. Kennedy, and Meltzer is very complimentary here. He says the company is currently grooming him to be the number one top heel, even though it's acknowledged that he has a ways to go in the ring and on the mic. They primarily because they feel Randy Orton has only been okay. However, he's still a head case, and they can only build up only some plans around him. So unless things change, Orton will still likely beat Cena for the belt at SummerSlam. But if he goes nuts again, the idea will be scrapped. So Orton is like, he's the ultimate company guy. But at the time, it even seems crazy to even think that they're considering Mr. Kennedy to be the top heel over a guy like Randy Orton. But we also talk about reliability. If you can't be there and have your head on straight and make sure that you're doing the right thing, you can't be the guy they built around. And they put a lot in Mr. Kennedy, and he dropped the ball 4 or 5 times. And I remember being very into him and felt like he was a rising star and like he was electric. He had this feel about him. Might be the biggest missed opportunity in wrestling history, especially given the fact that they put this roadmap of plans in front of us that he should have been a world champion, wasn't like that, especially in that era where everybody was a world champion, and he couldn't stay healthy. It was insane.
No, and it's funny because we're reading this is like it's the first time I ever had my in-laws watch pro wrestling with us was the infamous Mr. Kennedy return with the Lakers jersey, and he drops Orton the wrong way, and the next day he's fired. But you could, it's maybe this is where some of the heat with Orton and Kennedy came from, and it's kind of crazy, man, to see all this in the news, and it just comes back to me, man. It's like, they had so much love for Kennedy. It did not work out. It was a damn shame.
So at the risk of starting a larger conversation, I just felt like I should mention this. Originally, this was listed in the newsletter, and I cut it out, and I'm like, you know what? I should put it in here and talk about it. But just because I just feel like it should live here, especially if we're doing a catalog of things that happen here. Meltzer wrote, 2 WWE fans who attended last night's pay-per-view in Uniondale, Long Island, were arrested after the event. So Newsday reported that friends Keith Powell and Timothy Vandewater snuck backstage after the show. They attempted to steal several of the commemorative folded chairs given to the fans who sit at ringside for the event. A WWE employee who attempted to stop the theft was hit over the head with a bottle and bit on the back. Both men were charged with burglary, while Vandewater was also charged with assault. Where are those dudes now? And they were fighting over commemorative folding chairs? What are we talking about?
You have a chair in your hand and you hit somebody with a bottle too? Like, if you're not a real wrestling fan, man.
I was at this pay-per-view, Great American Bash 2008, so and it was awful, just as you remembered. But
yeah,
but yeah, that was I
crazy.
just felt like I should mention here because I didn't remember this happening. I never heard about it in the news, and it was right in my neck of the woods right here. I was there. People stuck in the back and they were stealing chairs. Wouldn't you go to steal something different? Like, what are you stealing chairs for? You just those that are every Wrestling Universe store now. You can pick them up if you want.
I don't know. The backstage area can be a little overwhelming, especially if you don't have credentials. So I'd assume they were freaking the fuck out. Like, what do we do? What do we do? Like, grab some chairs, dude. Like, but yeah, they messed up, man. They didn't hit the guy with the chair. It would have been fine. They would have been flat out. He wouldn't have gotten up for 10 minutes. We know this works.
So finishing up this version of the newsletter, Meltzer says Jeff Hardy's out with a 30-day suspension. Meltzer also said that Jeff is saying that he told his friends that he was out with an injury he suffered when he tried the Whisper in a Wind 2 weeks ago. Slip falling backward on his head and neck. But Meltzer says the issue that led to the suspension may have resulted from the bump. He was a victim of all the newfound negative publicity stemming from the wellness policy loopholes. There are already some changes being made, such as that if you fail a test, you're suspended and fined as opposed to just fined, with how it used to be. And the latest we heard that he would not be fired, but should be back in September. Although, like with RVD, it will be maybe a long time before they have any faith in him like they did, because they already had a hard time doing so. So again, these guys that they're poking holes, especially the media. They're poking holes, and especially they're opening up all these boxes and saying, why wasn't this guy suspended? He tested positive. And when you have a governmental agency overseeing this type of stuff, you have to be honest. And in the immediate, if Jeff Hardy pops positive for something, you got to suspend him, even if he's involved in some meaningful storyline.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
So fast forwarding to July 29th, 2008, WWE officially announced their changes to the talent wellness policy, most of which have already been reported. The major one was the official announcement of Dr. Joseph Maroon, the team physician of the Pittsburgh Steelers, as the company's new medical director. We have Dr. Martha Dodson works under him and will travel to the brand's physician on the SmackDown ECW Road Tour. And as noted before, Meltzer says talent is no longer allowed to go to the doctors when they're on the road to get prescription medication. It can only go through the company doctor. Dodson has worked as a doctor for USA Boxing, Arena Football, and minor league hockey. We also have Dr. Christopher Amon as the traveling doctor for Raw. He was the team physician for U.S. Women's National Soccer Team. We got trainers Chris Brandon, Larry Heck, and Jason Crivello join them on the road. Before we get into Dr. James Andrews, who's like kind of added to the team as the official surgeon, they're trying their best on paper, at least, to make this look as legitimate as a sporting contest, and they are treating this seriously. And again, it takes a year to get there. We're about a year and change removed from the Benoit tragedy, but change in the right direction is happening, taking things seriously. And, that's all you could ask for, but it took devastating effects for it to finally get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had so much devastating effects, moments leading up to it too. It's just, it's a shame what change has to, what things have to go through to experience and get the proper change necessary.
So as I mentioned, Dr. James Andrews of Birmingham will be the company's consultant and surgeon, a role he's unofficially for years had. We got Dr. Mark Lovell, who will be heading the company's neurocognitive testing, which will test officially for concussions, which began a couple months back. Dr. Frederick Feuerbach is handling the company's heart monitoring program. So they're going to be doing stress and heart tests and all that stuff. And really this stems from not only the death of Chris Benoit, but Eddie Guerrero and many others, because in the industry, there's the heart issues from the steroid use and all the stuff that goes into the wear and tear on their bodies, the working with concussions. moving in a direction where it's not perfect at this point. 15 years later, they're still working on it. We're having this conversation in news cycles now, trying to establish concussion spotters, and that still doesn't happen. And that's really the art of pro wrestling, where the selling and you can't tell what's real and what's not. And, with Jon Moxley's scary concussion at Grand Slam earlier in the year, it just becomes this, you want to recognize that at the very least, the health of these athletes come first. And even if it changes storylines for the worse, like putting the title on Rey Fenix wasn't their plan, but that's where they're going because you have to protect Jon Moxley. And I'm glad to see things like that.
No, 100%. I mean, it's necessary. It's always been necessary, but it's now finally being implemented because people are willing to stand up for it. People are willing to, take a title off somebody because they're hurt. And like in wrestling, that shit's unheard of, so this is revolutionary stuff going on right now. And I'm happy to be here to see it happen.
Yeah, and it takes time because it's still a topic of conversation where people are surprised by it in 2023. So it's not like it's this overnight thing. And I feel like a lot of it is lipstick on top of the situation. They're trying to make nice with the media and make it look like on the surface they're doing things, but we know wrestling continues to slide in a direction. It takes a bit to get there, and who knows if it's completely cleaned up, but it's in a better spot. They're on the right road, let's just say. But it took Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, all the stuff that happened with them, to really light the fuse. But those wrestlers that weren't with the company at the time, the Mr. Perfects, all the other, the wrestlers that have died over the course of time from steroid use. Why wasn't that the pressure to get there? Why did it take
100%?
Why did it take them to be employed and just have bad publicity to get you guys to do it? It's a shame. It really is.
It's shady, absolutely shady. Yeah.
So the official move to tamer programming to being a kids-oriented promotion came on July 23rd. WWE officially announced that all of its programs would be rated PG of the former TV-14 rating. We're going officially into the PG era, and Meltzer says they still do well regarding TV ratings with adults, but are trying to get the audience to attend the live shows. Kids are attending in droves. The other reason is this year's significant attempt to change the company's image. By being forced to run a more kid-friendly and less risque programming, they hope advertisers will no longer turn up their noses at pro wrestling. Vince has been obsessed for years with the company's inability to get ad sponsorships from the major auto companies. He's always complained that they have a huge audience and their audience buys cars, but the auto industry sees them as low-rent product that caters to people with disposable income. So, again, forced into changing their image because advertisers, because of the Benoit fallout, they're not trying to put their company name on top of it. And that changes, of course. We see all the companies are clamoring to get on a WWE ring or be sponsoring WrestleMania, Cinnamon Toast Crunch being on the fucking apron. That moves in the direction, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and they want to rehabilitate their image. And that results in this PG era that we have to endure in this episode. And we had to endure for about 10 years. It was quite the ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Meltzer also talked about really just the other high-end advertisers and wanting to get them. And he also says, of course, he's trying to do this when all the major companies and the auto companies more than most are scaling back on their ad budgets. In a sense, that would make you question the timing of making this move. Still, perhaps I think with the lowest per viewer ad rates on significant TV, the former big spenders will see the viewer numbers they deliver at low cost and get pretty much back in bed with them. So they look at this as an opportunity to try to convince people to come back to WWE. Advertisers, fans, we are family friendly. We're Disney on Ice. John Cena, he's rescuing everybody. And, everyone saw this news story of Benoit and it scared them away. But how do you get people to go back to the zoo after a lion ate somebody? Like, that's what they're trying to do.
Oh, very good analogy, man.
So we're talking about Saturday night's main event in Washington, D.C. The other thing that we're talking about is Jenny McCarthy's going to be there. We'll talk about her on here. She's raising awareness for Generation Rescue Group, which is we're not going to get into the details of it, but it's a very, over time, the foundation was kind of, opened up to some criticism. Let's just say it lightly there. And, it's about, talking about the causes of autism. Instead of raising awareness, they're trying to find a cure, which is controversial and wrong over time. So, we'll leave it at that. And of course, we'll talk about them on there. But Saturday night's main event is ripe with B-level celebrities. I mean, Jenny McCarthy and Toby Keith and Jewel, Billy Ray Cyrus. Not saying that in a bad way, but gone are the days with the highest level celebrity on Saturday night's main event. It's almost appropriate with the programming we're seeing with the PG era where wrestling is, where you open up with the biggest stars, the Cyndi Laupers and the Mr. T's, the hottest of hot stars are on TV on Saturday Night's Main Event in the beginning of this, and now we're seeing kind of past their prime type of celebrities that I don't know, they wouldn't have a place in 1985 Saturday Night's Main Event, but I don't know, we're getting is it being mean to call them B-level celebrities?
No. Billy Ray Cyrus, I mean, the only good thing he's done was make Miley Cyrus and Don't Achy Breaky Heart, is right?
Something like that, right?
I couldn't say, I know one Jewel song. Ben Stiller's the A-list out of the group.
So yeah, that's just, what they're doing on here. And of course we'll cover it as we get to it, but it's just to build awareness that they're trying to do the celebrity thing. But they're like they're damaged goods right now. Everyone's kind of holding their breath of like, we're getting involved. Hopefully it doesn't damage our reputation. They're almost toxic sludge right now, but WWE of course will bounce back in the biggest way possible, which makes the story even more amazing where they are now, that they overcame everything that they're kind of facing now with the ramifications.
3 times.
Truly. So we also have WWE sending a legal threatening letter regarding the Ultimate Warrior autograph session on July 20th at the Marriott next door to the Nassau Coliseum of the day of the Great American Bash. So about 150 people came for the $55 per autograph session. WWE complained about the timing of the event. Now they threaten if you book something near the show, they're going to send out a cease and desist. So Meltzer says they also complained Warrior was advertised as appearing with the WWF Championship belt. That is one they argue since title belts have been legally ruled as owned intellectual property of the organization. It was a belt of the company that gave him for being a champion. So he had that belt in him, which eventually kind of got him in trouble for working next door and trying to confusing consumers and all that. And to set the stage as well, like we talk about rehabilitating relationships, this is just another shot in the bow of this Warrior WWE relationship that they rehabilitate. By WrestleMania 30, he's back in the fold right before his passing. And, this was like, you're taking money out of the dude's pocket. Like that probably really upset him.
No, 100%. I mean, we've seen so many companies piggyback off of events for wrestling. Like this isn't unheard of. It still happens to this day. I mean, it's ridiculous. So the poor Warrior.
So we finish up this newsletter with the Canadian Sun media chain had a story this week on Punk winning the championship, noting he used to work in a comic book shop, manage a skate park, work in a gas station, and safety tested products as a lab technician before doing well enough to work full-time as a wrestler. Meltzer says he said he didn't find out he was drafted until the public did. He was standing there and his name was called. He said, quote, "I don't think WWE fans have seen anything from me yet. I think I'm going to be able to talk people into buildings. Just give me the microphone and let me go with it." Damn. How appropriate right there. Profound, prophetic. CM Punk in 2008, July, saying those things. And it's very much even more true in 2023. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah, it's insane, man. Absolutely insane. But listen, CM Punk was always going into this thinking, knowing he could deliver. And I think that's a good part of Punk's charm is knowing he can deliver and, give him a microphone, just see what happens. And I mean, that is Punk's test of time. Give him the microphone, see what happens. Cause that's what we all love from him. So a very, very, very prolific call out there.
So moving to the August 4th, 2008 newsletter, the main thing I pulled from here was CM Punk. And Meltzer says the original plan was for Punk to go heel and win Money in the Bank this year. The suggestion for Punk to win the title, the way it went down at first, didn't go over well. Still, the arguments that were made that since the company decided on a youth movement to shake things up, Punk is the guy to push more than anyone else. The argument is that Punk was more popular than he should have been given his push, and he sells far more merchandise than someone in his position should. Ever since Vince greenlighted Punk and winning the title, suddenly everyone in creative is 100% backing him. On the other hand, Meltzer continues, the producers were very quiet when they were told because many of them don't think highly of Punk's work, and none of them will ever argue against Vince's direction because everyone's afraid of losing their job. Triple H behind the scenes is not a supporter of Punk dating back to his arrival in the company, and even joked that they now need to turn Michaels heel so they can have Punk work with someone through a world title match. So Punk not looking strong is part of Vince's directive. Vince believes that Punk is a babyface, always clinging onto the belt against, quote, better guys will cause fans to get behind him in the long run. It's the same idea he had with Mysterio, which in hindsight, most feel was a big mistake, but Vince also was never behind Mysterio as anything but a transitional champion. Your thoughts on this? I mean, this is, again, it's amazing to me. I mean, Punk is one of those guys, especially in '08. Like, he feels like, I can't believe they gave him the ball to run with it that early on. And him as a world champion cashing in on Edge.
Yeah.
I felt like, especially at this time, huge fan of the direction they were going. This was like a breath of fresh air in a time where you were drowning, especially in just a sea of complacency. Punk was a breath of fresh air at this time, and him winning the title and being the guy, it wasn't well received in the back, but for whatever reason, Vince believed in him, and this relationship started to prosper. And he wasn't on this roster for a long time before exceeding the success we saw from him as a world champion.
No, 100%. I thought this. I mean, I was behind it. CM Punk went from a name that I would hear pop up on video game created wrestlers going, "Who the hell's CM Punk?" and then finding out his Ring of Honor stuff, all that shit, going into it, and then really being a fan of the direction change. I think it solidified the PG era. By doing so, you put fresh blood out there, and it takes to the fan base. I mean, you can't do more than that. Sure, we can't have blood in every match. Sure, we can't be getting crazy, but we got our guy. We got CM Punk. We got this young dude from Chicago, does not fit the mold. These tattoos everywhere, lip piercings. You know, he literally is a punk off the streets, and he's the world champion. Something you would not probably have seen in WWE, and you know, had not there gone these huge changes. It was revolutionary.
Agree with that. And then also the conversation about the way, I mean, historically talking about bad championship reigns, everyone references that Rey Mysterio title reign with being booked poorly. I mean, how many times was the guy pinned throughout that reign, booked in a way that was just so exposing as far as what they thought about Rey as a world champion? Your thoughts on that, like, underdog type of world champion being booked? Do you think in a world it can be done right if you found the right mix of guy working from underneath? Because before I let you answer, there's the conversation that I always think about with Bret Hart. There's that delicate balance where he's fighting underneath, but never exposed, never made to look lesser than. But I think with Punk and also Rey Mysterio in these early years as their championship reigns, they felt like they were lesser than. And even with Punk, he's a secondary champion. Like, people forget the World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE Championship are on two different levels. And there are times where the World Heavyweight Championship took precedent over the WWE Championship. But at this time, this was a mid-card title. Like, go back to when Sheamus squashed Bryan Danielson. That world title was lesser than. It could be the big gold. You can do revisionist history, but that belt was lesser than.
Yeah, no, they didn't treat it fairly. You know, the underdog story, though, I mean, it works when it works. I mean, and I'm going to use Orange Cassidy as a fair call out for that. I mean, him with the Intercontinental or the international title, same thing. But him defending that title every week, him, you know, having something to prove, like I this is my belt. I'm going to fight everybody. I think it was beautifully done. And I think when Mox beat him for it at All Out, it took away from Orange Cassidy. Like, I thought, I really did. There's no need for Mox to be the guy with the title, especially when that was a main event. I mean, we've seen Orange Cassidy in big programs before. But the same thing goes here. I mean, you could do this with swap out A wrestler with B, you know, opponent, and say that, well, he's the underdog. Bryan Danielson, underdog. You know, we loved when that happened. So the formula works when it's done the right way and it's done with good intention. You know what I mean? Like, if it's done with shit intention, it takes away from everything, and it hurts the product in the long run, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I don't think they had good intentions for Punk and for Rey Mysterio. And I also think if you give the Orange Cassidy character and put it on a WWE screen, they'd be pinning him all over the place. Dude. Whether he's champion or not, they would be absolutely just finding a way to make him look lesser than, because they would want to make a mockery of, because it's not what people enjoy. Maybe Triple H is a different mindset. I'm talking about traditional WWE at this time.
No, absolutely. So I mean, it's always up in the air. Hopefully, if they want it to work, it's going to work.
Well, of course, like, the argument would be, like, Vince wouldn't want something to not work. Like, he wants it to work. Maybe he believes that beating someone up, because this is the mindset they had with Bryan Danielson in WWE, like in 2014, beat him, and then people get behind him and they get frustrated. But that, to me, is bad heat, because then perception-wise, and I understand kayfabe doesn't exist in the same way anymore. When you beat someone over and over again, it feels, I don't know. I mean, going back to the last episode we talked about when John Cena got squashed by Great Khali.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you want to establish a big bad, but, like, shouldn't you establish a big bad against someone who's not going to beat him the next week? It just...
Yeah. Or like, why kill your golden goose in a really shitty angle on a show that you guys are fucking trying to dip out on?
Yeah.
Like save it for something more important. I don't know.
I just feel like the booking of like the Punk reign, that first one, the World Heavyweight Championship reign when he cashed in, Rey Mysterio's reign after WrestleMania 22, it came off as disingenuous. Like, see, I told you they couldn't draw, but it's also because like you beat them over and over again and people felt a certain type of way. I mean, even Miz's title reign was always looked upon as lesser than. And
I mean, Dolph Ziggler too.
Dolph Ziggler, same thing. Yeah, exactly. That was the perfect. Jack Swagger, like those champions, were they really world champions? And like, yes, they were. They held the same big gold belt that Hulk Hogan held, but there's certain tiers to it. And I think
in the form of Diesel as a champion,
exactly. That's part of like, you have to remember it in context, because people are like, oh, Dolph Ziggler held that belt, he was the guy. He wasn't.
Yeah,
like he wasn't the guy.
Nobody gave a shit. Yeah,
he wasn't the WWE champion. He was the world heavyweight champion. It's completely separate things. If you weren't watching at the time, it's easy to look at a list of champions and say this guy was a world champion. But Jack Swagger on that roster at the time, he wasn't a world heavyweight champion. I'm sorry, he wasn't. So
no, he was not.
He held the big gold belt, but he wasn't WWE champion at the time. WWE champion was the belt, and it ebbs and flows. What championship belt was more important? But at the end of the day, you should only have one champion, and that's why we're seeing Roman Reigns have this historic reign. One champion is what sells. But let's get our fix, man. Let's talk about the last two Saturday Night's main events. Let's get in there and talk about some of these PG era Saturday Night's main events that's going to leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth. But let's get there.
Get your fix.
All right, here we are getting our fix. Saturday Night's main event number 35 from August 18, 2007, Madison Square Garden, New York City, New York. Attendance being 16,827. Michael Cole, John Bradshaw, Layfield, and Jim Ross on the call. And here we are with this pretty much a hour and a half long commercial for SummerSlam leading up in 07. This, to me, again, similar to the same criticism we've given the last few episodes. This show really, having nothing advertised, makes it a little bit more egregious than the last ones we just covered, because the only thing they advertise on the show going up, unless I have it wrong, the graphic cards only advertise who was Vince McMahon's illegitimate son. And so the fact that they didn't announce any matches kind of tells you what they thought about this platform and where they were standing on it.
Yeah, I mean, and how do you care about something if they don't care about it? And I mean, if you're this proves that WWE wasn't a wrestling show, because they didn't even advertise wrestling. They were more worried about who's Vince's kid gonna be, and it was so bad.
It's horrible. And like this whole thing, people again look back on the Attitude Era with rose-colored glasses, because it's the Attitude Era and there's a lot of great characters. They were doing things like this, so they're going back to the well with this soap opera type of storyline, and Vince McMahon and Coach open the show. They're in the back to recap the illegitimate child situation, and Coach has been looking through the roster and says, "I think I know who the child is. That's yours. Who's your child at this point?" And looking through the roster, and they're going through, and Vince is telling about all the different affairs he's had, and and he kind of references and makes the joke, except for the one back in the 70s, and they kind of look at each other where Coach was born, and then they put up for adoption, and then Vince makes a joke that it's going to be a really long night, so alluding that Coach possibly is his son. Coach sells it like he's actually believing it. Goofy, stupid shit. Not a fan of this, and man, goes over like a lead balloon.
Telling for the future of Vince, man. Like, this is, if you couldn't have painted like a worse picture on a person, like this makes Vince look like the biggest piece of shit ever.
Yeah, agreed. And like, I think I get what they're going for. They want to build this appeal and like the larger than life characters, and they want to have a little bit of an edge, but I mean, they even did this in recent memory, not too long ago, but the Jason Jordan, Kurt Angle stuff they did, where Kurt Angle was his father. Like, the way kayfabe works now, and maybe it wasn't the same in 07, but people know who's related to who. And like, Edge and Christian are brothers, but they stopped really calling them brothers. Undertaker and Kane are brothers. They really kind of stopped calling them brothers. It was I don't know. Stop insulting the fans' intelligence by thinking that Mr. Kennedy could be Vince McMahon's son. Come on.
Yeah, and I mean it was a mess.
Get it? Because like my middle name's Kennedy and his last name's Kennedy. It's crazy.
That's why I named him that, pal. Like, come on.
So we open up with Batista and Kane taking on Finlay and the Great Khali, and they pretty much take 2 SummerSlam matches, mash them up, put them in a combination match. So Finlay and Kane with his taped up ribs, they're starting things off, and this is just a lot of meat slapping into each other. So Batista's in the best shape of his life, dude. This guy is. You want to talk about an athletic big man? This dude was able to do a lot in the ring. I think Batista's an underrated addition to the main event scene. I don't think he gets his flowers enough. I think he's an absolutely amazing addition to the roster. He definitely played the bridesmaid in this John Cena era, similar to Randy Orton, but Batista is that guy. Like, he feels like the presence here. You know, but a piece of this, I mean, this is a total house show style main event. I mean, they go out and they do they empty the bag of tricks here, and we wound up seeing a double choke slam, putting Khali down, and Finlay takes the pin. That's his role in this match. He took a Batista bomb, and that's it. 8 minutes and 25 seconds. And I got to say, I mean, the wrestling to me is not really the important part on this show, but I do think that this match, it's all downhill from here because I was entertained by this. And to say that everything else entertained, I'd be lying. But this to me was like, okay, cool. There's no other option of this ending. They made the right choice. Finlay gets pinned, but you know, like I said, if you went to a house show anytime in the mid-2000s, you probably saw this variation of a match.
No, 100%. And it's like, again, the biggest takeaway here is it's a shame that this is what the end of Finlay's career in ring was, because this is some of the worst shit you could be slapping people together. But at least he was in the ring with Batista, right? Like, you could give him that.
So we go in the back again. Vince is desperate to know who his kid is, and then he looks in the mirror and they turn him into his 80s version. Coach gets out of there, and then we get Ron Simmons coming in there, and he casts his own reflection. This is, again, goofy. Just like maybe this would have resonated back in the early 90s, but it doesn't hit at all, and it's not funny. It's just not. It just I can't emphasize how stupid this is. There's not even a sliver of this was anyway, like, oh, I could see why they went. No, it's horrible. It's not great. Do you feel the same way? Or am I just passionately just over here, just convulsing with negativity? I'll
always pop when I see Ron Simmons do the damn thing. We gotta give some love there. But again, I don't think the world was ready for the nostalgia piece of all this and seeing 80s Vince. I don't think anybody gave a shit. And especially when Vince is playing such a fucking sleazeball here with all this, paternity stuff. It's just bad. It's off. It's not done well. And like I said, like, the best part of the whole backstage thing is Ron Simmons seeing himself in the mirror and going, damn, come on, guys, you got better than you're WWE. You're supposed to be way better than this.
You can make the argument that some of this stuff is worse than 2000 WCW stuff. I'm being completely honest, and I think revisionist history will have the WWE machine finding why this is good or whatever. But if this appeared, this would be like Judy Bagwell on a pole. If this was on WCW, it would be made fun of on memes and all that. I just think they have the benefit of writing the history books, so they can find a way to either make this disappear or because no one really even there's not a lot of highlights from this time. Like, if you go back and watch like historical videos, yes, they show John Cena videos, but he has such a long career that it kind of washes over you. A lot of the stuff you'll see is the early John Cena, 2003, 04, even 05, when he first wins the title at WrestleMania 21, and then later on. Like, I feel like this is such a blind spot for wrestling fandom, and maybe again I'm just sitting here with my blinders on because I wasn't enthralled. I was watching, but I wasn't enthralled.
Yeah, no, and there's a lack of hook, line, and sinker here. There's a lack of depth and story with all this. Like, who gives a shit about Vince's kid? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're past, as you said, the kayfabe era. Like, we don't need these fucking fake tests coming out and they're like, oh, what great, we get to see Eugene again. Like, it's all It's just done poorly, very well. We're very done poorly, and I don't know if it was them trying to say, "Hey, we don't want to be on these NBC things anymore. Fucking pay us our money, get us the fuck out of here," because that's what it feels like at this point.
So we open up with this Coach and Vince McMahon illegitimate child corner segment, and since DNA tests have taken so long, it's time to find out who the child is. Coach is on the mic talking about how Vince is a man with urges, and Vince is getting impatient. He says, "Come on, I want the answer who it is." First, Vince had an affair in Kentucky, bringing out Eugene. Vince is adamant that it cannot be Eugene because he slept with a woman, not his cousin. Eugene says his uncle Eric wanted to get him into wrestling because Vince nailed his sister. So he cuts off Eugene, and Eugene just responds with, "I love you, Dad." So Vince throws him out, and out comes Melina, and they say
this was the hardest thing to watch, man.
Vince, apparently, they go back to a WrestleMania 2 after party in LA, and Melina looks rather upset. They both insist that it isn't her, and apparently they had a meeting on the 4th of July, which means that they hooked up, and they're hoping that she's not the daughter. Melina better hope that their meeting was harmless, or she's suing him for everything he has, which is like, you want to talk about prophetic, like that's funny. And Vince is like, "Well, I was in New York for WrestleMania 2, not LA," so that makes it clear. Coach says, "Well, there's one more person. I don't want to bring them out," but Vince says, "I insist," and out comes Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Best fucking pop of the whole thing, for me at least.
Of course, yeah. And then Vince has that great face where he sees Austin and it's cartoony. Austin thinks Vince could be his father, and the result of which they're at least teasing the idea this could be there. And Vince says there's no chance of that, and Austin says it's too bad. And
all the time we missed. We could have went fishing.
Exactly.
We could have played catch. God damn it! Like it didn't have a first beer. It was bad though. It was even for an Austin Vince segment. It was like, come on, guys, like, you could do so much better.
So Coach gets a stunner, and Austin makes it clear, like, I could stun you. It'd be the easy thing to do right now, but you are obviously hurt and depressed. And so he stuns Coach. He's drinking beer. Vince pulls himself up, and then he stuns Vince while he's down and out. And really, there was a few jokes until we got the Austin Vince moment, which honestly will pop any crowd. You mentioned the pop of the night; it always works. The stunner to Vince always works. The beer shower always works. Like everything.
Never really seen a show that desperately needed the Stone Cold pop than this one.
Yeah, and it's weird because I didn't expect him to come out, especially with the idea that I don't know. I know he's not active at this time, and he's always like popping in and out of the product, but it was weird to see him, and it was like a breath of fresh air because it was like, oh, wow, okay, cool. There's someone I can really get behind. And can you imagine if they would have went the route of rewriting history and saying he was Vince's son this whole time? Like, that was the scary part of thinking it was a possibility. And, like, it changes the whole canon of how things work.
Yeah.
It's stupid. Like, it's just, why would you do something like that? Which is probably why they went with Hornswoggle, because it's the most inconsequential decision that doesn't affect
100%. Yeah, and but I thought this whole segment was fucking ill, just ill. It's the best way to say it. Like the whole hooking up in Los Angeles thing, and then he's like, oh no, she already looks disgusted while she's out there, and it's so just dirty. I don't like it at all.
It's definitely in bad taste for sure, especially what we know now, and it becomes things come to light in 2023 that would make this look worse. And yes,
why didn't Vince just pull out his checkbook in the middle of this? Like, I can hush you right now.
Exactly.
we would have been like, oh, that sounds about right.
Sounds about right. But we lead into John Cena taking on Carlito. This is a non-title match, and it's also the Big Apple Showdown is what they're billing it. In New York, obviously being Big Apple, but Carlito, we know his gimmick is he spits in the face of people that don't want to be cool, and Carlito is essentially squashed here. So Cena just takes him to task and pretty much makes him tap with the STFU, 5 minutes and 40 seconds, and this was Carlito, coming from a few years prior, his first win on the main roster was winning the United States Championship from John Cena. How the mighty have fallen at this point. So he loses in pretty fast fashion, and John Cena is getting ready for his match against Randy Orton, which we see the build-up for that because after the match, Randy Orton runs in. He gives Cena an RKO through an open chair. Cena's out cold, and Orton is just in his heel error here, just staring at him. Randy Orton's epic. And the RKO never fails to pop me.
It looks good on chairs, too.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta give it that.
It looks
Yeah,
good. I mean,
was...
like we were saying last week, you do it off a fucking water slide at Splish Splash. It's still good. So.
Shit, we've seen Instagram videos where he does it in the pool, and you're still like, God damn, that's a great RKO.
So I'm putting you on the spot here. If you had to choose one finisher between the two, is it the RKO or the stunner? Are you which one to me?
Always gonna land stunner, just because nothing made me happier than seeing the stunner happen, and it still pops me to Austin could come out with a fucking shit-eating grin on his face, look at his watch, oh shit time, boom boom stunner, I still go home happy, but I doesn't take away from how impressive and awesome the RKO is, but this stunner is near and dear to the heart for real.
I agree with you 100%. And I mean, how many shows in a row? I mean, I'd have to go back historically and find it that we would see back-to-back sandwich the end in a stunner and end in an RKO. I mean,
yeah, 100%.
There can't be that many because, I mean, maybe 03 when Austin was the sheriff on the Raw roster and Orton was running wild as the IC champion. Maybe there's a couple there, but to have them back-to-back, it was pretty special. Yeah,
no, and it was beautiful. So
maybe my tolerance is very low. I'm just looking for good things here. Maybe
it's okay. That's a good. That is a very good thing to think about. The stunner always brings in the warm and fuzzy, safe feel.
So they're setting up this Randy Orton versus John Cena for the WWE Championship match at SummerSlam, and then we lead into this boxing match that's going to be happening. And why is it happening? I can't tell you why. It's Evander Holyfield with MVP in his corner, taking on Matt Hardy in a boxing match. So we get women at ringside, and we got Michael Buffer doing the introduction.
Michael Buffer's only post WCW appearance.
He was at the Rumble in 08 too.
Okay. So
I think maybe it's an MSG thing. Maybe they
were using him here. That was it. Yeah. They were like, let's call Michael Buffer, damn it.
What is Michael Buffer? I mean, he's expensive on Cameo. Can you imagine what he expected to be booked for a match that was 2 minutes and 44 seconds and ain't no contest that you brought Michael Buffer in for?
I popped for it. I'll tell you, I heard the voice and I was like, oh shit. This is one of those moments where I had to do the double take and I was like, it is Michael Buffer. Because it could have just been Justin Roberts doing a really good Michael Buffer impression because he gets away with it sometimes, but this was actually Michael Buffer in the white jacket, in the flesh. His appearances are easily six figures. I mean, that's why they don't use him anymore. But
so Michael Buffer in 2008 was there for the Rumble, so maybe he signed on for like two appearances in one shot or something.
Yeah,
he was there at the Rumble, like I said, and yeah, so let's get ready to rumble as the dude. But he does the introductions, including one for MVP and Holyfield's corner, and Matt Hardy is rocking the headgear to prevent everything the damage coming from Holyfield. 2-minute rounds, and Holyfield knocks him down in about a minute. So Hardy gets back on his feet and he gets knocked down again in about 20 seconds. He's surviving to the end of the round. MVP is very pleased with what's going on. And the bell rings for the second round, and Holyfield doesn't want to beat him up anymore, and MVP's yelling at him like, no, I want you to beat him up more. And, that's it. So
he puts his hand on Holyfield. Holyfield's not having it. He turns around, pops him right in the face, knocks him out. It's great. Then Matt Hardy and Holyfield hug for whatever reason.
So bizarre.
This is so bizarre. And I do remember kind of the context was that Matt Hardy was always trying to tell MVP he was better than sports than he was, so maybe this played into it somehow with the boxing thing, but why Evander Holyfield and not MVP? Like, none of it makes fucking sense, nor does it need to. It was a really weird moment and felt very Butterbean setup kind of deal. I was expecting Matt Hardy to get fucking knocked really well, and it didn't happen, and I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting out of this.
So I'm looking at Evander Holyfield in 2008. He was 46 years old. He was fighting still, technically, and most people have the awareness that Holyfield had his ear bitten off by Mike Tyson. So, like, culturally, he's very irrelevant.
Yeah.
So this kind of fits this B-list celebrity situation that we're talking about throughout the next episode. Like, I'm not saying Evander Holyfield's not famous, but, like, it's almost years removed from, like, I know he's active, but it just doesn't feel like it hits the same way that the active celebrities at the original NBC vehicle used to have, these like very relevant celebrities where it just almost feels like, hey, you kind of had some fame at one point, just pop on with us. And
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that just speaks volumes to where the product is.
Mike Tyson didn't want anything to do with Saturday Night's Main Event. It wasn't a thing.
Well, he's still bitter about Buster Douglas. So
yeah, he's like, I'm not doing that. You guys can't get me on Saturday Night Main Event. Fuck, man.
So we go to our main event here, and it's ECW getting the closing spot. It's CM Punk and the Boogeyman teaming up to take on Big Daddy V and John Morrison. Of course, Matt Striker's in John Morrison's corner, and Matt Striker's actually with Big Daddy V. So they're moving through the entrance pretty quickly. They feel like they're in a rush for time. They really do. So this match, cool to see CM Punk in the main event here, especially in this ECW run. Definitely nostalgic for sure. Baby CM Punk for sure. A lot more stuff going to go down in his career for sure. A lot
more hair. Yeah.
And
still very ginger backstage and polite. Like
so teaming with the Boogeyman, you know, the most famous tag team he's ever been a part of, right? I mean,
I've never
not him and Colt Cabana, right? It was always CM Punk and Boogeyman, always.
No, he didn't go on Boogeyman's podcast and get Boogeyman taken down.
Reverse the roles and say Colt Cabana's here, and he goes on Boogeyman's podcast.
It would be great, right?
2014 and shoot on everybody.
This week on Coming to Get You with Boogeyman.
First the con, it's a Conrad fucking.
It's got to be, of course. Oh shit!
What's up, man? How are you?
Yeah, I'm coming to get ya.
Well, you
and so is Blue Chew.
You see those worms? Yeah, sponsored by Blue Chew. Do you have Blue Chew prior to eating all those worms?
What about Blue Chew worms for the holiday season?
God, so good. But this match is pretty quick. Like I said, 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And Punk grabs a small package for the win on John Morrison. And that's it, man. So pretty uneventful. They definitely were running out of time. They're trying to get everything in that they could. You felt they were compressed. But honestly, like I'll take that over what they probably did, what they could have done. Like I thought it was pretty good. Big Daddy V, it leaves a lot to be desired as far as moving around the ring, but
always has.
But he's bigger than ever in this match, man.
Yeah, and less clothes, so that doesn't help the situation.
A lot of
nipple. That areola has some real estate.
Yeah, so he passed away in 2014. But I mean, if you guys remember Viscera or Mabel, Big Daddy V is the largest version of him ever. And maybe it's just because, like you said, he's wearing less clothing and he's just hanging out there, but he's a big boy.
He is a big boy. He always has been a big boy, but he is big here. I mean, no, they don't call him Big Daddy V for no reason.
Yeah, and one of his lesser known roles, but presentation wise, maybe his most serious main eventer.
Yeah.
I know Mabel won King of the Ring and was challenging for world titles, but I could see Big Daddy V, in a different era, taking on Hulk Hogan in like a big main event. Like that version of him for sure.
He have more serious look to him. It's like a Zeus on crack, like people would be like, oh man, look at this big guy. And Hogan would have eaten it up in the, late 80s.
Well, if you remember Viscera, when they first took Mabel and like whatever they did, they indoctrinated him into the Ministry of Darkness, and he debuted the next week with the white mohawk and the eyes that had like the slit contacts. He wore that full like Dr. Evil suit, but all black and covered up. And this one, like you said, this dude is aerial to the
wearing a singlet, man, like Rey Mysterio did a few years ago.
That singlet is just like trying its best to just hang on for dear life.
It is a piece of floss in between two mountains. Let me tell you.
So commentary sent us to the highlight video to wrap up the show, and keeping in mind that this was just to build up SummerSlam as a pay-per-view, I would say it's passable for sure. They definitely could have cut this down to an hour and cut some of the stuff out, especially the Vince McMahon stuff and the Vince and Austin deal in the middle. I mean, I did enjoy, like, you could have just found a different way to have Austin stun Vince and then send everyone home happy. It's definitely not a show that you had to watch, but it certainly wasn't as offensive as the last episode we just watched last week, and certainly not as offensive as the one we're about to endure after this. So your thoughts on this show here? Because I honestly, like, again, maybe it's comparing it to last week's main event stuff. Like, seeing Punk in this role was cool. Like, there's some appeal to it for sure.
That was good. I listen. As goofy this fucking the boxing thing was, I enjoyed it. I'm a boxing guy, so I was like, oh, Evander Holyfield, that's cool, real deal. Evander, Michael Buffer, I'm a huge mark for Michael Buffer just because of the WCW shit. So I was like, oh, they did give him a chance up north. It's like, thank God, but. Yeah, not much going on here. The Orton thing was nice, but everything else just kind of fell short, which is fine. I mean, it didn't need to stick either. So I'll take it. I'll take it for what it was. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't anything spectacular.
I would like to hear the story about how Michael Buffer came out with "Let's Get Ready to Rumble." Like what?
Yeah.
I don't know if he's like, what is he sitting on the deck one day smoking a cigar and be like, I got an idea. Because it's so synonymous with big fight.
Bruce, come here. Let me run something by you real quick.
Michael Buffer or Bruce Buffer came out with the Let's Get Ready to Rumble.
It's got to be Michael Buffer.
Michael was
right?
the original that said it.
Yeah, because it was always him. But I think it's like they kind of did their own thing together. Who family ties? How do you have two legendary ring announcers in one family? It's unheard of. So they're just blessed for it, man. He lightning in a bottle. He was just like, what would sound really good if I said, let's get ready to rumble, and everybody pops their ass off for it now. So I mean, I love it. I'm here for it.
Well, that being said, let's get to Saturday night's main event, number 36, July 28th, 2008, from Washington, D.C. Host being Jim Ross, Jerry Lawler, and the aforementioned CM Punk is at commentary for the first match. This is taped. NBC did a very low rating here. That was part of the conversation that we read up to this, that it's not air, and most of the shows are not hitting with the casual fan. They're really tapping into their core audience and relying on them to carry them through this bleak winter ice age that is wrestling fandom. And here we are at the PG era, or we're smack dab in the middle of it, July 28th, 2008. And we lead right into some great action here with some familiar faces, of course. Cody Rhodes, John Bradshaw, Layfield, Kane, and Ted DiBiase taking on Batista, Cryme Tyme, and John Cena. So JTG and Shad making up the team of Cryme Tyme. Lead us through this match, man. Outside of the entrances being out of order, where there were alternating heels and baby faces, which was bizarre to me. Never saw it in my life. Can't say I was too offended by this match, especially where where I'm sitting right here comparing it to some of the other stuff we'll see later.
Yeah. I always enjoyed Cryme Tyme. I love the teaming with John Cena. Thought it was good. JBL with Kane is a weird thing. Ted DiBiase, Cody, come on, man. I mean, you could have took
finish your story, Cody. It started here,
right? And look who's on commentary: CM Punk talking shit the whole time. It's great. But this wasn't anything terrible. I mean, for what it was, there was probably given too much time. Seeing as it was like a bigger tag match, but it was still fun to watch. I love JBL as a heel. I think this is my favorite form, and I'm such an APA guy, so it's surprising to hear that out of my mouth. But I enjoyed it for what it was. Cryme Tyme's great. I miss Shad and JTG, man. They were always a fucking fun little watch. So
RIP to Shad, man. That dude,
dude, what a hero. I mean, talk about going from tragedy with Benoit to tragedy with Shad. I mean, Shad gave his life for his kid, man, and like, what a goddamn hero, dude. I was so heartbroken to hear about that. That was such a messy circumstance, but it was beautiful in the long run. He gave his life for his son, and it's the best shit that I mean, how are you gonna be mad at the guy, right? Like, how can you say a ill word after that? But I mean, this was good back and forth. Punk was fun on commentary. Just didn't do it for me.
It was a flat finish, of course, and the ending. So JBL hit JTG with the clothesline from hell. He pins him at 11 minutes and 20 seconds, and JBL was cycling away from his relevant run as the wrestling god and the guy who's the world champion. He's still active, and it won't be long now that he's part of the main roster, but he just doesn't feel like he's fitting the aesthetic of where they're going. And I know they're still pushing him, obviously, but this is pretty flat, especially with the characters in it. And of course, John Cena being there and Batista and Cryme Tyme too were very over at the time. It just, I don't know, didn't flow. And for the finale of Saturday night's main event, we got used to really hot openers. This wasn't one of them. It had the opportunity to be, especially with the characters here, and it just wasn't. But we lead in the back. Jeff Foxworthy tells us about the Autism Initiative, and we got Carmen Electra, and they say later we're going to hear from Jenny McCarthy. And
why?
just apparently the initiative is important to them at the time. And like I said, B-list celebrities, got Foxworthy, Jenny McCarthy. We're just waiting for, I don't know, think of a B-list celebrity that should be here and just like take them two years out of relevance. And they probably would, what child star from a
Sugar Ray, Sugar Ray
yes.
is coming in. They're playing the
Smash
great
Mouth here.
Yeah.
They're going to play Cody Rhodes to the ring. So. But yeah, just comparing it again, maybe it wouldn't hit as evident, especially comparing to we watched all 36 of these episodes, and a big appeal to Saturday Night's Main Event was the connection with music and pop culture and acting and movies and TV and all that stuff that's rolled into this thing. And WWE always had their finger on the pulse, where it feels like now it's almost in the other direction, where it's like this
they couldn't
residual
call Mr.
effect.
T.
It's a delay effect where like people that are well past their relevance is like, all right, now I'm going to cycle back to wrestling instead of just wrestling getting them first. They already cycled through their 10 minutes or 10 years of fame, whatever it is, and we're getting them on the back end.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like,
am I being mean? I'm not even that tuned into celebrity.
I'm here for this. Because this is like a who's fucking like. Let's grab a grab bag out of 2000 B movies. Like, oh, Carmen Electra, she was in a Scary Movie. Throw her in there. Jeff Foxworthy, he hasn't done shit since '98. Like, call him up. Like, what the fuck is it? It's the Jenny McCarthy. What was the last thing of any importance that Jenny McCarthy?
Well, she was on WWF TV in 1995, so I just remember that. But
that's huge, right?
Huge
hey, we're gonna have her come talk about battling autism because that's so fucking smart, guys. God damn.
All right. Well, either way, we have the great Khali with Ranjin Singh taking on Jimmy Wang Yang, and so this was a squash match with great Khali throwing Jimmy Wang Yang around the ring. Finished him with the tree slam, 1 minute and 31 seconds. And that's it for the match. So
I pop reading the notes. This Jeff Foxworthy couldn't even fucking introduce Jimmy Wang Yang.
You had the opportunity right there. And Jimmy Wang, let's give Jimmy Wang Yang his flowers for a second. This character was awesome. And they never gave it I enjoyed it. The Asian cowboy stuff really popped me. I loved it.
Yeah, and he was still working it we were doing the GCW show. We covered a Jimmy Yang Wang match, and it was amazing. Like a phenomenal match.
And a very talented wrestler. Like a very, very talented wrestler that, in a sea of mediocrity on this card, he was unfortunately recipient of a squash match from the very limited great Khali with the tree slam.
Listen, Ibushi was a week away from this happening to him. All right.
So we go backstage again. Ben Stiller's telling us more about the initiative with Jenny McCarthy and blah, blah, blah. Ben Stiller's pretty much reading off cue cards here. This is his night at the museum moment. And then Jenny McCarthy joins us live on tape to the arena, and she's talking about Generation Rescue. And, again, if you look into the history of Generation Rescue, this is a charity organization that does not age well. So just so you do your own research on it. But Jenny McCarthy is there being featured, and WWE gave her a platform, and it's up for discretion what you believe and what you don't believe. But I believe this doesn't age as well. It ages like
regardless of your beliefs, this does not age well whatsoever.
100%. But it also, it's similar to the optic of the Vince McMahon stuff. This doesn't age well as far as being on the platform or your TV. So
no, absolutely not.
We learn over time, guys. It happens.
I'm surprised half of this isn't cut from the network. Like that's how fucked up all this is. But hey, we got Ben Stiller and Jeff Foxworthy guys.
But they also have interns working on the fucking network. So they're not cutting things out. They're just trying to find a way to compress it and put it in the right file. If you remember how disjointed the original network was, I'm sure this is deep. Who's watching this except us? This is one of those things we just popped it on there and it's just there, so
I thought that's why they hired Mick Foley's kid, was to do this shit right. Damn it, Dewey, what have you been up to, man?
Is he still employed by the company?
I don't think so. I think he got let go during COVID.
Oh, gotcha. Well, we need him to sort this stuff out.
We need Dewey back, man. No Kane Dewey. Hire Dewey.
Hire Dewey is the hashtag here. So we get Edge cheating on SmackDown on Vicky Guerrero, and he gets put in a Hell in a Cell match against Undertaker at SummerSlam. And they run down the SummerSlam card, which, man, looks like a freaking great card. I forgot about SummerSlam this year. and it looks like a great card. Unfortunately, we didn't get any of that energy here, but SummerSlam '08 looks fucking stacked.
It was a good pay-per-view. It was a great pay-per-view, man. They usually delivered on those those big fours no matter what. And SummerSlam was one they didn't like the drop the ball on. That's for sure.
So going to SummerSlam '08, I'll go through some of the card here just to build some context. So we have MVP versus Jeff Hardy. We also have Santino Marella and Beth Phoenix taking on Kofi Kingston and Mickie James. We go with Matt Hardy against Mark Henry. CM Punk versus JBL for the World Heavyweight Championship. Triple H and the Great Khali for the WWE Championship. Batista versus John Cena. And we get Undertaker and Edge in a Hell in a Cell. So front load of the card, not great, but those three main events are, pretty good. Taker, Edge, and Batista, Cena. I believe that's where Cena broke his neck. If I remember correctly.
I think so. Yeah. And then Triple H and Khali put on that almost 60-minute barn burner, man. It was insane.
Meltzer's still talking about it.
That was just Khali walking down to the ring.
So I'm looking for the fallout of Batista.
Yes, Cena's definitely.
I'm almost positive because they did that powerbomb spot where John Cena broke his neck. I'm almost positive. But yeah, 2008 SummerSlam is one of those cards that you look at, and they're hyping it up here. They're trying to make it feel like a big deal, and it is. SummerSlam is a big 4 pay-per-view, and they still do the same, the same type of energy where SummerSlam feels big, especially in the stadiums now. And this wasn't of course, this wasn't where they're at yet. They had this in the Conseco Fieldhouse, and 15,000 people, almost 16,000. So that's kind of what they're doing here, and they were yet to do these big stadium shows yet, but we're not quite there yet, but it still has good energy.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we go to Edge taking on Jeff Hardy here, and I got to say, this is definitely a sight for sore eyes for sure, and especially with, like we mentioned before, I think Edge, maybe it's because it's this era of wrestling, Edge is the MVP of this roster, and I think he holds it together. He really is the glue, and watching him work here, especially with Jeff Hardy, these two had such great chemistry. And they really find a way to pull this. I don't know. They pulled this event out of the fires of hell because Edge and Jeff Hardy went out there. And again, maybe it's just batting with a weighted bat and like watching this after. But Edge and Jeff Hardy, like I said, good stuff, man. And if you think about historically the history with Edge and Jeff Hardy and even in tag wrestling and just their ability to, just their stories are so aligned. And I don't know. I just love the serendipity of the first ever tag team ladder match at No Mercy 99, Edge and Christian versus the Hardys, and now competing in a big match here on Saturday Night's Main Event. They've had other main events in the past. It's just really cool to see them. And, they both live on the AEW roster now. Maybe we get to see this down the line with, Edge and Christian versus the Hardys again one last time for a nostalgia run. I don't know. It's kind of cool to think about. Yeah,
no, it absolutely is. And then what a shot of nostalgia it would be to actually get to see that happen, in 2024. I don't think Tony's going to pull it out before the end of the month is up. So I'm interested to see the future of it. I hope it does happen before contracts expire and so on and so forth. But yeah, man, this is a piece of gold and a pile of tinfoil.
Yeah, this was a fun match. 13 minutes and 26 seconds. Yeah, it wasn't their best effort ever, but they did a serviceable job of entertaining. And Edge winds up getting the win with the spear. Rightfully so. Edge is the guy at this time and feels important, especially going into this Taker match at SummerSlam. You want to have him going in strong before being written off TV. And I got to say, man, we've been very hard these last 2 episodes, and I believe rightfully so. And I hope you guys enjoyed us listening to us. And truthfully, if you guys have been listening for the past almost 100 episodes of us doing this, I'm a very positive person. And even in the darkest corners of WCW 1996 and Smoky Mountain Wrestling 1994, I found the ability to, take the positive silver lining. And I feel like we did find some silver lining here, but man, I guess people really have to consider when they talk about, everyone wants to talk about WCW 2000 or WCW 99, even TNA, mid 2000s as the worst wrestling they ever watched. I have to disagree, man. The roster here is awesome and they have a lot of talent, but the PG era of WWE might be the most, awful TV. Yeah. And this again has taken people and alienated them from wrestling. And if you ever feel disenchanted with the product today, whether it's on AEW side or WWE or Impact, go back and watch something like this and watch them run through and sleepwalk through the production of this. This just shows the need for competition on either side. This is just booking stuff and being asleep at the wheel and just knowing you're going to get to your destination. Like there's no pressure to, put the shoulder to the wheel and like start driving aggressively and finding a way to make people entertained, because they just were complacent here. I know you keep using that word, but it's complacency at its worst.
Yeah. 100, very well said. 100%, man. I mean, it's they were just coasting, literally driving with neutral down a hill and just letting shit happen. Like, oh, there we go, speed bump, great Khali. Like, there we go. It's crazy what they threw at the wall to see what would stick. But listen, we had to go through this to get to where we are today. And there's always that bright side of things. Like, it does get better. It does always, like, this is what we call those dark periods of our fandom, because we look at this shit and, like, we're embarrassed, not just for ourselves, but for, like, our fan base, our fellow fans, like, why the fuck are we letting ourselves to this, especially now that we have an alternative again. It opens your eyes, like, shit, it could always be that much worse, like you said. So
I completely agree. And I think we are so quick in the social media age. And like, I've just been recently going through X/Twitter and reading news there, and it brings down your feeling on wrestling. And like, I don't even follow half the negativity, but the way it's structured now is if you follow someone and they like or reply to something, it appears on your feed. So all the negativity that kind of cropped up at this point 2 weeks ago with the Mark Briscoe Them Boys thing with WWE Fox tweeting it, just brought up the ugliest side of wrestling fans. And to me, it's just like, just why can't we just enjoy the product on the screen and just let what we love galvanize and bring us together instead of tearing us apart because of what you enjoy on the screen. And I think everyone is in agreement here that wrestling's in a better space than it is going into 2024 than we were here in 2008. And it's because of competition. It's because of healthy dose of places for talent to work and creating a better environment for not only fans, but for wrestlers, because 2008, this monopolized culture of what WWE had become at this point, it's watered down. It's complacent. I use that word again. And just, it's a lack of passion, and you just feel it resonating on the screen.
Yeah. It's just garbage. Absolute garbage.
Needless to say, we will not be covering WWE 2008.
They have forfeited that in their own merit of shot.
Yes.
Saturday Night's Main Event.
Saturday Night's Main Event isn't their main structure, and I'm sure there's some really great Raws or really great SmackDowns during this era. We mentioned some great stuff, great characters, the Edges, the Batistas, the Cody Rhodes is there, and there's some bright spots for sure. Yeah. And there's a bright spot in every single era of wrestling. Like you said, you can find, as critical I am of New Generation, there's some great matches that happened throughout that era with Bret Hart and Diesel and
100%.
some great stuff. But I have to say, as far as a full cumulative look at a year, certainly wouldn't be my first choice. Might be my last choice for a year we're going to cover in full. To endure a full year of this would be nothing short of torture. I'll be honest with you. The PG era of wrestling is not for
me. We were just short of Maury Povich being on Saturday Night's Main Event. So Jesus Christ, exactly. Man, it probably would have been more entertaining. This was a look into a part of the past that I totally could have skipped, and hopefully we don't have to revisit it too often.
Yeah, as we wait for Andy Milonakis and Tom Green to appear on our screens, we're going to get to the chaser and pick our favorite part of these 2 episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event. Let's get to the chaser.
The chaser.
Now I'm going to be thinking about the bum song. My bum is on your lips. My bum is.
What was Andy Milonakis? He did the pee on my head, right? Don't call me a pee head.
But don't call me a pee head. His show was great, though. The Andy Milonakis show was like one of my favorite things to watch. I enjoyed it. He was goofy as fuck, and he's a funny cat, man.
So here we are picking our favorite parts of this episode, or these 2 episodes, I should say. Belcaster, I'll start with you. Your favorite to pick from this. Again, no, we're critical. We're having a good time with this, guys. I'm not going to be overly negative, but again, I'm looking at the full scope of Saturday Night's Main Event, and in comparison, the duplicate or the less inspired duplication, I should say, never compares to the OG, which was what we got to consume so many weeks in a row.
No, absolutely. And we seen once they dipped into the 90s, it all changed for everything. Goddamn you, Lex Luger. No, listen, my takeaways are very much what I talked about with the last show was, I really enjoyed the Michael Buffer part, the Evander Holyfield. I mean, even the Matt Hardy thing was goofy. MVP, I was a huge fan of MVP at the time, so it really sat well with me. Orton calling out, Punk, or not calling out Punk, but calling out Cena and doing the RKO on the chair was great. Not much on the second show. I mean, Edge and Jeff Hardy, fantastic match, but not. I wouldn't put it in their top 10. And we've seen a lot of good Hardy and Edge matches, and maybe some more to come. But I mean, yeah, I give my shout out to Michael Buffer, man.
Says it all, Belcaster. I have to say, I'm going to go with Edge and Jeff Hardy by default here. And there's not much else to really come from here. And I do appreciate the Randy Orton, John Cena allure at the end. Like the Randy Orton heel persona works so well always.
Yeah.
But this was littered with just absolute dog shit. And also to set the context, that number 35 Saturday Night's Main Event was at MSG in New York. So they're at the Mecca and they're putting on this Vince McMahon and coach segment with the illegitimate child corner. Like that's happening at MSG. Let's keep that in mind. This wrestling museum feels like this is the most hallowed ground. And this is what they're doing here. It's just crazy to think about. But if this is for you, you like the sport, you like the sports entertainment, comedy, goofy stuff. This might be for you. And, I'm more of a work rate person. I like when there's, larger than life storytelling. I was very complimentary of the Macho Man, Hulk Hogan stuff. I love it. When it's done right, it's done, to me, that's great. But this type of stuff really has no, it has no spirit. It doesn't feel like it's based in good entertainment. It's just almost just knee-jerk reaction to get something from the fans in the immediate, not long-term storytelling.
We learned the most important thing of all time, though. Hulk Hogan was always a fucking heel. All right, always. He's still every even in that Randy Orton segment, he was still a fucking heel there. We just didn't see the heel side of things.
And maybe we should have went in backwards order because I think we'd be ending on a really good note. Because I really enjoyed, just to put some positive spin on things, I really really enjoyed this season. It might be one of my favorite seasons we've done because it's such. The content here is so forgotten a lot of ways. I think people remember the big moments for Saturday Night's Main Event and the main event, of course, with the 5 that we covered there. People remember the big moments, of course, the Mega Powers exploding and seeing that happen in real time. But there's some really good matches on the underneath, the Genius and Hulk Hogan, those 2 out of 3 falls matches for the tag titles. And
beautiful. Yeah.
Watching, Shawn Michaels win his first ever IC championship on screen and first championship on screen, and just seeing some of the great stuff that happened underneath. Because I think wrestling history, we think about the big 4 we talked about. WrestleMania is like driven in our head. SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, those moments live on our head because of the stages. But seeing some of these characters that get opportunities like, Ted DiBiase getting his moment to shine, or watching One Man Gang get a title shot, seeing those types of stuff on our screen is refreshing. And it's also cool to see the story being built over time and jumping through these hurdles as we went from 1985 to 2008 right here, jumped through so many years. It's the most unique season we're ever going to do. And I had a really good time with it. No,
man, listen, the content was there. It was a blast. I really, really enjoyed rewatching all these because, I missed a lot of those early Saturday Night's Main Events being a kid. I really like it was before I was around. It was before I cared enough to turn it on and notice it, and watching the intricate details put into the storytelling back then, leading up into these long sagas of stories. It was beautifully done, and I love obviously the Mega Powers thing. But as you said, these one-off main events that we had with guys like Terry Funk versus Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship, and you can't replace shit like that. And it was done so well, and it was fun, enjoyable. Those 2 out of 3 falls tag matches were some of the best tag team wrestling I've seen under the WWE WWF umbrella ever. And that's saying stuff. So it was a very very awesome time. I think this is, as you said, this is possibly one of my favorite seasons we've done because it's been so all. I mean, we started off with segments of George the Animal Steele at a zoo, and going all the way from there to Vince McMahon trying to find his illegitimate son in the middle of the show. Like it's completely opposite. And back again. It was insane, but it was such a hell of a journey, man. I'm sad to see it come to a close here. It's just so bittersweet, but what a fucking good time this has been.
Like all good things, they come to an end. But I have to say, I really appreciate the newsletters, and I think the context and seeing really in real time, watching WWF become Titan Sports, and then becoming this superpower and the monopolization of wrestling as time went on, and watching that journey and kind of reading in real time and understanding behind the scenes and finding out what's going on with the talent. Because I think a lot of the retro watch along review shows that are out there, and they're great in their own right. I think without the context of the real time, because I think what a lot of shows is talking about current day product, we are immersed in like what is the context of what's going on. We know that these things mean certain things, and like when Punk, I think in history, if someone was to talk about Punk or watch an event from watch 2023 Survivor Series and CM Punk comes back, maybe 25 years from now, no one really understands like the AEW portion of it. It like kind of folds into one where it's just a big deal that he returned to WWE. But watching that in real time and living through the moment, it's different. And hopefully we built and scaffolded enough of the information that you guys feel like it, at the very least, it was like reliving through it by having the news cycle consume you and whether people enjoy Dave Meltzer or not, he is a wrestling historian who provides the context. And I think, having the hard copy newsletters that, brought to life what was going on in the years and seeing WWF really take shape into what they became today, it was, to me, fascinating. And I learn more and more every season we do this. And I continue to, learn how wrestling and history repeats itself. And over time, a lot of the stuff that has happened before and people were shocked that it happened. Well, you can look in the history books and found out that years before something like it or very similar happened before. So, again, let's close the tab. We'll eulogize this season and get ready. I'll preview NXT takeovers and talk about those dates and make sure you guys are well equipped as we approach really the end of this year and say goodbye to season 5. Let's close the tab.
Closing the tab.
All right, as the lights are coming on the bar here, you know where to find us on the Turnbuckle Tavern. We are saying goodbye to Season 5, Episode 18. We have finished our journey throughout Saturday Night's Main Events catalog. As we said, we went out with a whimper with these rejuvenation or lack thereof, these mid-2000s PG era type of ones. But, man, like we said before, what a season it was. And we are looking forward to, again, if you're listening to this on audio, you're not going to see a lapse in programming. Starting next Saturday, we're going to be dropping the first episode of Season 1, WCW 1996, covering all things Monday Night Nitro, covering all things on pay-per-view. You can hear a younger Belcaster, a younger ACEFIELD Retro, less seasoned podcasters, less polished equipment. We may even talk about modern-day product that doesn't feel relevant today. Who knows?
But it's still a hell of a listen, man, and it's
100%.
enjoyable. And no, it's wrestling. There's no ill-timed topics because it all leads to something, and it's all led to somewhere. And we had to walk before we could run, man.
Absolutely. And I want to emphasize that still to this day, when I see people and they talk to me about Shad Nostalgia, there's something special about that first season, the relationship we built over time by doing the show together. How many weeks in a row grinding through a lot of product and talking about the newsletters, all the different guests that have been on here. And we will return. This is not the end of Shad Nostalgia. That we will be back. As I said, NXT Takeovers is our next in line. We're going to have some great graphics for you, some black and gold era NXT. We're going to be starting that on July 26, 2024. It feels like it's forever from now, but it's going to be here before you know it. We're going to, like I said, every single week you're going to get 30 episodes of WCW dropping on audio. And by the time you're done with that, we'll be here for NXT Takeovers.
Craving some black and gold, baby. Craving.
So covering everything from 2014 to 2021 and everything in between, starting with TakeOver on May 29th, 2014, and Fatal 4-Way on September 11th, 2014. And like I said, every single Friday, 7 p.m. dropping. So I'm going to miss doing this in the immediate, but I'm pretty sure for our own sake, you and I and Matt from Extra Cooler are going to find time early in this year just to bank some episodes and get them in the fold and eventually figure out what's coming down the pike for season 7, season 8, season 9. And, I know you've been clamoring for a TNA, especially with the revamping of the app with TNA Plus.
I mean,
we got to hop in the lab.
Wax poetic, baby. Absolutely wax poetic. I'm here for it, man.
So, closing thoughts on this, Belcast. I really appreciate everything you do for the show.
100%, man. And this is one of my favorite things I've found doing in life, man, is getting to take an hour or two out of my week to sit here with you and talk about old wrestling that either neither one of us has watched, only one of us has watched, we don't remember shit of, we watched the whole thing together. It's seriously the highlight of my fandom, man. I really enjoy just bullshitting with you about pro wrestling, and I mean, we do it in such a great format. I don't think you could complain, man. But this was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I'm going to miss Saturday night's main event so much. I hope they do bring it back. I hope it's bigger and grander than ever, and I can't wait till we hit black and gold. We're not saying goodbye. We're just doing what our good friend Philly Phil does. We're going to take a sabbatical. Maybe we'll see you in a couple weeks. Hi, Call Cabana. No. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it, man. I can't wait. The WCW is so rich and so thick with great wrestling stuff. I can't wait to re-listen to it myself, and I can't wait to enjoy it because it's a good time. I'm glad the people who are in the audioverse are super excited to finally get a glimpse of this, because we put a lot of hard work into that season, much like we do with every other season here. So I'm super stoked, man.
And it took a while to find the format of the show, and I think really it always stayed in the same spirit, but in the beginning it was really finding our footing, and that's going to be the interesting part about going back and listening to it. And I wanted a big conversation of why we're even doing this is because trying to find a transition place to drop these audios. And we watched the Chads try to figure out with broken VCR and drop them all at once. And there's so many episodes, and how do you have the space on Libsyn? I mean, not to get into the two analytics of trying to run a podcast, but you can't just uplift the audio and place them on a server. You have to do it over time, or you're going to pay an exorbitant amount of money to have it live there. So the perfect thing, and especially with absence, makes the heart grow fonder, and will give us the ability to, as the winter and spring and we get into summer, we're going to be ready and willing and all that to get back into the lab and create these NXT episodes. Like I said, we may be recording them in advance throughout the year and storing them as time goes on. You're still going to get our voices here on the tavern. Like you said, we're going to get the WCW ones, but as far as relevant content, every single Monday night on YouTube, talking about wrestling tonight. And next week we have the tourneys coming up, so make sure you guys tune in for that on Monday night, so you guys can get all our awards. Chad and I are going to give out our awards for the end of the year superlatives, and also Brace for Impact, covering all things as we emerge. Like, we're at the tail end of 2023, going into really what's going to be an amazing 2024 for not only wrestling but for TNA Impact, and it's going to be amazing. And this week too, while we're recording this Thursday coming up, I'm going to be at Restival. So I hope everyone, first of all, has an amazing Christmas. It's going to be, I can't believe it's here already. So Christmas Eve is going to be on Sunday. Monday night is going to be Christmas Day. And hopefully everyone has a beautiful holiday. Got the beautiful tree behind us. Yes. And we also, like I said, here at Tavern, I just appreciate everybody as we approach 2024 and kind of wrap up Shot Nostalgia here, and having this platform to talk about wrestling with our friends and have this place to, have this. It's almost like a therapy session for pro wrestling fans to have this platform. And for anyone that listens to the sound of our voice, we just appreciate you. There's bigger things coming for the Tavern. We're going to keep the same passion, same spirit, same consistency. But like I said, I'll leave it there. Bigger things are coming, and just strap on for the ride. The day ones, we're going to be here, but tell your friends about us. Tell somebody. As 2024 approaches, we want all the ears for all the wrestling.
Yeah, and if you're new to tuning in this season with us, I mean, go check out some of our older stuff. I mean, check out the audio drops, absolutely. But I mean, on your YouTube channel, we got, Smoky Mountain, we got ECW, we got WCW, we got WWF 1998, which was fucking taxing, but so fun. We've done so many of these. Every Tuesday night, you could see me on Fig Night. I'm opening awesome action figures like this beautiful Danhausen right here. And it's just like, there's no shortage of getting your Ace and Mike fix. So hopefully maybe we'll be able to get Ace on an episode of Fig Night and we could do a shot of nostalgia throwback to where we talk about some of our favorite toys when we were younger. That would be great, man. Lots of cool stuff like that. We would always keep room for crossovers, but you guys know where to find us by now. I would hope so.
Yeah, man, I'll put up one of those superstars. Then I'm collecting those in completest fashion. I love that line, the newer ones that just came out. Hopefully get some figures for Christmas. I know you got some under the tree right there. I know Santa's bringing you some.
There's there's Darby's hanging on the ladder right there. I mean,
there's got to be, right?
They are part of the tree now.
Yeah. So there's a tree hanging on Darby is what you're saying.
Absolutely. He's carrying the tree,
But again, we appreciate this. Again, if you guys are listening to audio, you're not going to miss a beat. We're going to be back next week with WCW 1996, episode 1 of season 1. So we're going to be back
very less sober season as well, because we were actually doing shots of nostalgia.
I forgot we did that. That's insane that we even did that, especially with all the DQ finishes. Like, crazy.
Yeah, no, it got bad after a while. Like, you could tell we were coming out of COVID stuff, and we were just like, yeah, we could still get fucked up and do podcast. And now we're kind of more relaxed and like, yeah, let's maybe grab a Sprite or something. Jim Cornette's not always wrong.
100%. But you know what, Belcast, for the last time, you can lead us out. It could be Ventura. It could be whoever.
You know what? How can it not be Ventura McMahon? We're sitting here. It doesn't matter if it's 2008 and there's Stone Cold Steve Austin on my screen. It doesn't matter to me because the glass shatters and you hear the Teslas coming in from the Bajas. Okay, from the Panamas and the Bajas. We're going Mad Grape style. We're doing it for Minnesota. We're doing it for all the Minnesotaites out there. The Prince fans, the